This is a story of gothic madness that is unfortunately true. It begins my freshman year at college. I was enjoying my first few weeks immensely, although a little cliched at times. Drinking, fucking, smoking, drugs, and streaking. All great stuff I recommend people try. Safely and in moderation, he added for legal reasons. Suffice it to say, I wasn't looking forward to going home come winter break, especially not to my ultra-conservative Orthodox Catholic family. To paint a broad stroke, my father once made me watch a 5-hour documentary on the presence of Satan in rock music, so I was looking for any excuse not to go home. That's when my older brother called. He told me that he and his wife had recently bought a house. Being absolute geniuses, they decided to move in right around the time they scheduled a vacation. They needed someone to house sit, not just the building, but their 2 dogs as well. They asked if I'd do it, and I said yes. Again, any excuse not to go home. Then and now, I lived in the Chicagoland area. My brother's home was located in a place called Lake Moore. Lake Moore is a community about an hour and a half outside of Chicago. Its main claim to fame, at the time, was being situated next to the village of Volo, a town famous for its bog. To recap, Lake Moore's primary accomplishment is someone else's bog. Driving there is fascinating. Leaving the city, you can watch civilization evaporate out of existence the closer you get to Lake Moore. Buildings vanish, suburban sprawl disintegrates, and farmland even transmutes from cultivated land to wild prairie country. You watch the metropolis become the suburbs, which turn into small towns, then scatterings of residents dotting the countryside, until you arrive at Lake Moore, which is stretches of prairie broken up by infrequent car dealerships, boating barns, and fast food joints. It looks exactly like the kind of remote location you'd expect the Texas Chainsaw Revival to take place, the Church of Leatherface holding services nightly. But it's cheap and populated by an assortment of redneck white trash all-stars, something I'm sure appealed to my brother because he has always aspired to be king of the rednecks. However, that said, he is proof dreams can come true, so I'll give him that. Regardless, I arrived, dropped off by my father, who left rather speedily himself, not wanting to linger in this locale. Mostly he didn't want to risk commenting on the subdivision my brother currently occupied. My dad could never resist an opportunity to criticize someone, so, in the interest of politeness, he said, "I'm just going to pee real quick, then get the hell out of here." You see, the place wasn't finished. My brother's house was complete, but the rest of the subdivision was still under construction. Whole buildings, just the skeletal frames of houses without walls. Bones waiting for meat and skin. A few other homes looked done and might have been occupied, but it was hard to tell because, according to my brother, locals occasionally passed through using the area as a shortcut. If you saw someone in the distance, it didn't mean they were walking to a house. They might simply be walking elsewhere. Although to where, I have no idea because there was nothing out there. Hell, they loitered on lawns for any number of reasons before just drifting off and disappearing to the shores of the scummy lake nearby. This was certainly the land of unsolved true crime. My apprehension went up a tick when my brother showed me where he kept his shotgun. He informed me there might be the occasional meth head drifting through. So if tweakers showed up on the front lawn, pounding on the door, or whatever, here is where to find the shotgun. I didn't know my house-sitting responsibilities would include cutting drug addicts in half with a shotgun blast, but there it was. The sister-in-law showed me around the house. They had literally just moved in, by which I mean the furniture was mostly situated. However, all their other stuff was still in boxes. The house looked more like a warehouse than a home, a labyrinth of cardboard boxes. Of course, they took the time to set up the essentials, the kitchen, the bedroom, and the home entertainment center. An enormous television surrounded by towering speakers. Being a heavy metal fan, I asked about blasting the stereo to get our ears bleeding. "Can't do it," my brother said. "All our CDs are somewhere in these boxes and I lost some wires, so the radio does not work." "Okay," I said. "What's on TV?" "Nothing. We haven't hooked up the cable yet." "Whatever, let's throw in a movie." "Cool, we got 5 DVDs. Let's just circle back to sum that up real quick. No music, no television, and only 5 DVDs, which were Saving Private Ryan, Jaws, Halloween, Scream, and Apocalypse Now. That's when it started to dawn on me. I was supposed to be in this ghost town without any means of distraction for 8 days. See, I hadn't brought anything except a book, and one can only read for so long, Plus, as we'll find out, I had brought the wrong book. The next morning, my brother and sister-in-law departed, leaving me to my own devices. I read for most of that first day. It was a novel called Descent, a sci-fi thriller based on the Hollow Earth hypothesis. Essentially, there is an immense network of interconnected caverns all over the world, populated by deformed humans who occasionally come to the surface to snatch people and drag them below. Their monstrous appearances being the inspiration for myths about demons and hell. Creepy Elephant Man-esque mutants who climb out of the ground to drag people screaming into the hollow earth. It was then I realized something interesting. The back window was huge and looked out over a prairie expanse. Nothing but tall grass for at least a mile. But this being an undeveloped area, there were no lights. Even the few functional street lamps in the subdivision only halted the darkness, it didn't penetrate it. As such, once night descended, looking out the back window, the light from inside went a few feet before terminating in a wall of absolute midnight black. About that time, the dogs needed to go to the bathroom. I decided not to take them out in the backyard. Besides the wall of darkness waiting to swallow everything, never mind the prospect of inhuman nightmares that might come screaming out of it, the back fence wasn't complete yet. The last thing I needed were the dogs disappearing into the wild, because I was certainly not going to chase them into the night. Let the Hollow Earth mutants eat them, I don't give a fuck. So instead, I opted to take them out on the front lawn. I opened the door, and standing on the porch was the biggest goddamn raccoon I have ever seen in my life. It looked at me with an expression of shock, as if I'd walked in on it masturbating. Equally surprised, I slammed the door in its face. I opted to brave the backyard, dug around in the box labeled dog stuff, and found leashes. Outside, you could definitely hear things moving through the prairie. The wind at times, maybe, but definitely the occasional animal. The subdivision was so new, many critters hadn't developed a reason to avoid it. In fact, a few times during my stay, I saw a deer wandering down the street looking around like, where the hell did this come from? Am I crazy? This was not here a month ago. But the world was definitely alive, with unseen things all around. To put it mildly, I was tempted to squeeze whatever piss and shit the dogs needed to get out in order to hurry us back inside. As such, when they finished, we went back in quickly, only to find the front door wide open. I remember saying something like, well, shit, then not knowing what to think. I guess the raccoon must have gotten in somehow, my mind thankfully going for the less unsettling prospect. Like a horror movie novice, I closed the front door and made it a point to lock it shut. Then I began the search for the invading critter. The dogs were yapping wildly, so I assumed this meant something must be in the house. I explored the first floor and found nothing. That left the second floor upstairs. Now this is where it gets interesting. Light switches only illuminated the second floor hall. Switches for the 4 or 5 rooms did nothing. They turned on the power in those rooms. However, unless lamps were already plugged in, they lit up nothing. Lamps were still packed away, so the hallway was just a lit corridor dotted by dark rooms filled with stacks of boxes, some shoulder high. Plenty of places for an animal or even a person to hide. I explored the best I could, but found nothing. At first that gave me some peace of mind. However, the dogs wouldn't stop barking, and every time I tried to coax them upstairs, hoping they'd find the errant animal, they refused to go up the steps. In addition, the house, being decidedly new, creaked and groaned constantly, every sound implying something moving about within. Yet the more I searched, the more certain I became there couldn't be an animal inside, a fact that nagged at me because I kept thinking, there must be something in this house, especially as time went by. The dogs would be sitting quietly on the couch, then suddenly run at the stairs, bark but never venture up. I felt certain I heard something moving, yet saw nothing. Another round of searching, another and another, revealing nothing. I started to think if something is in the house, it must be smart enough to avoid me. It must be a person. This thought, once seated, slowly grew, and I became certain someone was in the house. Every creak cemented the notion. I started sleeping less, expecting to catch some sign. Then, feeling fatigued, I worried going to sleep is when the intruder would strike. This inspired a vicious cycle of staying awake to avoid getting murdered in my sleep, the lack of sleep deteriorating my ability to be rational as well as fueling hallucinatory episodes. Shadows moved in the corner of my eye, and I imagined hearing things in the house, faint voices and furtive movements that fueled my paranoia blossoming out of control. Hoping for some sense of security, I went for the shotgun, only to find it locked. This amounted to an insert similar to a kryptonite bike lock. It fed through where shells are loaded, resulting in two things. One, it stuck out noticeably, meaning I couldn't pretend it was loaded or functional. Two, gun dealers will tell you that owning a shotgun is decent home defense, even without ammo. The distinctive pumping noise can be enough to scare off intruders. However, with the lock in place, I couldn't even pump. The dogs, furthermore, amounted to teeny marshmallow poofs. Adorable, but unlikely to save me when the machete madman tired of this cat and mouse. I only hoped that killing them would give me a head start to escape. Hoping to search more thoroughly, I found a length of extension cord, then used that to plug in a standing lamp. I'm about 6'1", and this lamp almost matched my height. Sort of flashlight staff. I thought I could use it as a light and a pole to jab back any intruder I might uncover. Thus armed, I tried to explore the second floor better. See, not all the rooms had windows, so even during the day they remained dark as hell. But even with my 6-foot lighted pole, I found nothing. I started to wonder if the intruder went into the basement. Perhaps during some fatigue-induced micro-nap when I passed out for a few short minutes, whoever was in the house darted below. I opened the basement door, looked down into the concrete abyss at the bottom of the stairs, and immediately shut the door. Then I piled the heaviest boxes in front of it like a barricade. Anyone wanting to get in or out would have to make definite noise to do so. Feeling a little more at ease, I decided to distract myself with a movie. Apocalypse Now, in retrospect, was not a good choice. I have never felt more called out by a film in my entire life. The theme of creeping madness was almost accusatory. Worse, entertaining, thought-provoking material always fires my imagination, which, at the time, was fixated on the notion someone is in the house. Now, probably slithering between the drywall, watching me through pinpricks. I started to shower with a knife on the soap tray, ready to stab whatever lunatic burst in. Side note, a bar of soap is a precarious sheath for a butterfly knife. It will fall and almost stab you in the foot. That became my daily routine, creeping through the house, searching it top to bottom over and over, showering with a knife in my hand, debating if the shadow I saw moving was a hallucination, trick of the light, or a person. I was in that house for 8 days. During that time, I slept maybe 16 hours, almost none of it consecutive. Every minute, my paranoia increased, and sleeplessness fueled more concrete hallucinations, sound and visual. I started to become certain of irrational things. I convinced myself there wasn't anyone in the house. I'd been there too long not to have caught some certain sign, and even if there was, they hadn't attacked me. What did they want? But maybe there's nobody inside, in which case, why do I keep hearing someone, and what is driving the dogs randomly nuts? Oh, obviously it's ghosts. My dumbass brother bought a house on haunted land, and his house is full of ghosts. A prospect that is more unsettling than redneck Jason wannabes because you can't stab a ghost. A person I could fight, worst comes to worst, but ghosts? You're done. Once the specter fed enough off of my tear to solidify, I'd be fucking murdered by a ghost. Plagued by such thoughts, at last, the final day arrived. My brother would be returning in the evening, so my dad came to get me in the afternoon. He flinched when he saw me. We didn't speak on the drive home. When I got back, I went straight to bed. I passed right out of existence, sleeping for 14 solid hours. Talking to my father afterwards, he said, "Yeah, I'm not surprised you needed sleep. When I picked you up, you looked deranged. Escape from the asylum deranged." My sanity definitely cracked during those 8 days. I don't think I ever really got it all back, but whatever was in that house never got me. By which I mean there was nothing in that house. I had gone insane. Worse, I learned that despite my desire to live alone, that might not be the best thing for me, because I am certain of one thing. If someone else were with me, I could have talked my way out of the madness. Or at least we could have slept in shifts, gone back to back fighting ghosts. You have more and better options when other people are around. Isolation is hazardous in ways you can't prepare for.